Good afternoon and welcome back, ladies, gents and Pikachus, beloved viewers of my channel. I think it's time that we had a little talk about infidels, Muslims, the apostasy law, and the reason why you do not find rebellious Muslims speaking out against the evils of Islam. So let's look into that in a little bit more detail and figure out why this happens. I'm your host, Daily Corvid. Let's get started. Would you like to know why there are no prominent Muslims speaking against the evils of Islam? Do you want to know why we don't find any of these guys, even here in the West, where we supposedly have democracy, free speech, rights to an individual view, your own religion and culture? There is a reason why we don't see any of these guys, and it is not because there are none. There are many, or there were many. But the religion of Islam, the religion of peace as it claims, has a system of law for dealing with these dissidents, these infidels. In fact, they get the worst punishment of all the people punished throughout the Quran, which, as we know, is everybody who doesn't submit to the will of Allah, who doesn't surrender to the religion of Islam. So history is littered with these people. There was a guy called Jamal Khashoggi. Anyone remember that name? Now, he was a Muslim who spoke against the evils of Islam. He was a big critic of the jihad, the invasion of the West, the many crimes against women and children that these guys purvey through the commandments of Allah. He went into the Saudi Arabian embassy to fight his case and never returned. What actually happened, and this was proven afterwards, is agents of the Saudi government who had invited him there for a friendly chat, because he was a journalist and he'd made some rather scathing critiques of Islam. He was invited into the consulate and in he went. And while he was in there, they put a black bag over his head, wrestled him to the ground, damned him to hell forever, chopped off his hands and feet, and then his head. And in the ensuing panic, parts of his body were actually discovered, and they claimed, even after the discovery of these body parts, that he had committed suicide, rather like what we see with Mr. Peter Lynch. That's always what they claim. He did it to himself. He committed suicide. But the evidence on show told a different story, and we could tell from that evidence and from the testimony of his now widowed wife that he went there peacefully to make his case reasonably, in good faith. And they tricked him. They deceived him by telling him that his safety would be ensured because the religion of peace doesn't allow for murder. Yet we saw what we saw. That innocent man, who was a Muslim, was killed in the most disgusting and brutal of fashions. Dismembered, beheaded, and then dishonoured. And his family will never return to an Islamic country now. His wife has vowed never to go back to Islam. So why, when these things happen, do we not hear more about them? Why, when we know these things are happening, do we still wonder why it is Muslims will not come out and speak openly against the evils of Islam? Why do we persist with this fanciful notion that Islam can be reformed when it treats its own journalists, its own citizens, in the way that that man was treated and his wife was treated? Well, it's because there are commandments from Allah which make you an infidel if you don't agree with these things and actually continue to offend in that way. There is a law called the Apostacy law. And what the apostasy law is there for is to limit the freedoms of Muslims to pick faults with their own religion, to criticise the religion of Islam. And as we saw with Mr. Jamal Khashoggi, when you fall foul of those rules, the punishment for you is worse than death. You don't just get a merciful beheading, oh no. You are tortured, dismembered, and then just before you die from blood loss, they curse you to hell forever and chop off your head. And then your body is dismembered into pieces. And you never get a burial. Now, we only know this from the testimony of his solicitor and his wife. The details, the sordid, disgusting details of this crime came out afterwards. But the Saudi government blamed it on an individual. They said, oh, we didn't sanction this. The king definitely had nothing to do with this. And they put to death the secret agent who had actually invited Mr. Khashoggi there. They blamed it on him. So he became an infidel, despite the fact that he was following orders and he believed in Islam. He was working directly for the sovereign of his land. Yet he died an infidel. So what can we tell about these things? Well, I think the obvious thing that we can tell is that Islam is not to be trusted, even within its own ranks. You have to fear death, even when you're a devoted, faithful Muslim, unless you have no questions or doubts and you are 100% willing to do the bidding of your nation, who is controlled by Islam, the bidding of Allah, the jihad. And so we know when they say death to the infidel, they are not just talking about us in the West. They're not just talking about Christians, Jews, women who don't wear the veil, children who are not brought up in the faith of Islam. They're not just talking about the rest of the non-believing world. They are talking about dissidents within the world of Islam. And as we saw, a fate worse than death is something these guys have become very good at. And it creates fear. Fear creates control. Control creates obedience. And obedience is what Allah demands. So in conclusion, how do we know we can never trust Islam? Because there are no dissidents. Dissidents of Islam are murdered immediately, and their families are put to death in future, and they will deny this, but we know from reading the Reliance of the Traveller, their current law code, and from reading the Quran and the supporting hadiths, they don't respect country borders, don't respect the laws of other people, they think them to be intolerable, evil. And they certainly don't respect the boundaries of a person's life. And they will be willing to kill you if you dare speak against them, even as a Muslim. So that's the conclusion of this video. Don't ask yourself, why are there no Muslims speaking out against this? Ask yourself why we have not become a haven for Muslims that are willing to speak out against this. Why do we not protect the Muslims who wish to leave, but we are quite willing to protect the various criminals and terrorists that come here from foreign shores to fight the jihad and murder these guys as infidels when actually they are peace-loving people. They want to be ex-Muslims is what that is. But they can't risk it, because not only will they suffer a fate worse than death, their families after they die will be tortured, hunted down and murdered in the name of the religion of peace. And I think until we can find the resolve to face this honestly and really make a personal stand, because the government are too weak-kneed and cowardly, too pathetic to do anything or even speak against it. Certainly Starmer's government have shown that. Until we the people have the courage to stand up in voice against this, despite them name-calling us and threatening us with legal penalties or pulling down our YouTube videos and comments from social media, if we can't stand up for this in our own countries in full voice, these ex-Muslims have no chance of victory. The reason they come here is for that peace, that protection, that grace, that freedom that we promised them as a peaceful democratic nation. But if we keep letting them down like this, there can only be one end to this holy jihad. And it's not one any of us peace-loving, moral people want to see. So keep that in mind the next time someone says to you, Islam's a religion of peace. Allah is the true God. Just have a little think about why they might be saying that, despite the fact that it is not good for them. Perhaps they are more worried about the safety and survival of their children, their wives, their families. And as well they might be. So what's the answer then? Well, I don't know. But until we can have the open, honest discussion and not fear recriminations, insults, or legal penalties, that answer will continually evade us. and we will never have true peace. But I have great faith in this nation, great faith in you, my viewers, and myself, that we have got that courage, that we have got the resolve, we have got the will to fight these guys in the proper way, in the correct way, and given sufficient time we can beat these guys. We can defeat the jihad, and by doing so we can save all the honest Muslims who actually would love to leave and stop having to call themselves Muslim, and just be free people of the world, able to live in peace and prosperity. That's what we should aim for. That's what this channel's about. So, that's the end of this video. Hope you learned something, you listened and you enjoyed this. God bless you all, and I'll see you lovely people in the next one. Bye now. And while I don't know what the solution is, I can tell you where that solution will come from. The solution will come from the truth, and the truth is Jesus. So pray to Jesus. God bless you all, have a lovely day, and I'll see you beautiful people in the next one. Bye.